I think you said a few words, but you're muted if you would intend to share that with everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Marie, you want to start?
Oh, I just said, is this better?
Now we hear you, yes. There we are. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining in today. I apologize. I mentioned earlier I had intended to send out a sort of pithy little condensed version of the RFP that included just the scope of services that we were asking for. And apparently I did not do that successfully. I sent out the entire RFP. So I apologize that did not quite hit the focus that I was hoping to focus on at that time. The intent of that was to make it for everyone to think about, have an opportunity to think about what we were looking for from these various architects. And in addition to doing the historic structures report, we expected the firms to do assessment of existing conditions and investigations of existing conditions and forensic examinations, and then to document those findings, to prepare a report that includes that, but also to look at the existing HVAC systems in the building, understand what the condition of those HVAC systems are, not necessarily from a historic standpoint, but to understand how they function, how well they function, anything that's not functioning well, anything that's at the end of its life. We want to make sure we have an understanding of that, so it'll help set priorities for us. And then to also prepare a prioritization list which included cost estimates for that work that they anticipate. Obviously, these are high-level costs at this time. It wouldn't be down to the penny. This would be a very broad brush, but that was part of what we expected from the architects to be able to help us with. Then the selected firm would also be required to meet with library staff, library administration, the board, to understand what happens in the library programmatically, what we anticipate will happen in the library programmatically, what we hope might happen in the library programmatically, and be able to synthesize that into a guide on how the building might function programmatically as we move forward. And I don't mean whether we have events in the building. When I say programmatically, I don't mean whether we have an event for the building at 5 to 7 in the morning or 5 to 7 in the evening. I mean what we hope to be able to do in the building for library services. What kind of services does the library provide for our community? And then to take those ideas and synthesize those into a program plan, how that might happen in our building. And we've requested at least 2 concepts for how they might do that. And then to prepare a cost estimating for that process as well. So that was the charge that we gave to the 3 firms as part of the RFP that they replied to. We got responses back, a range of prices, low, medium, and high. And a couple of them were pretty close together. One was significantly lower than the others. And we had a chance to sit down with them individually, and really appreciate everybody just making the time available as a group to spend the whole day meeting with these various firms and thinking about what they're hearing what they had to propose, meeting them as people to understand what kind of chemistry we might have at working together, and being able to ask questions of them. Did anyone have any thoughts or questions about that process, things that were that they're not clear about in terms of the RFP, receiving the RFPs, having the interviews, questions that came up as part of the interview that they did not feel have been addressed or captured? Hello, Michelle. How are you?
Hi.
We were just starting. We were sort of talking about the looking back at the RFP process and the interview process. I think there had been when we had finished the interviews, I think there was a brief conversation where people said, hey, if we have any questions, how do we go about asking additional questions? I think Paul and Joy were going to be the point persons for those additional questions. And I don't believe we received any additional questions for the interviewees. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, no, there weren't any additional.
Great, great. So now we have to go through the process of figuring out who would be the best fit to work with us on planning, assessing the library as a building, and planning, how we might move forward with the library as a building, as well as what activities might happen inside that building that may be the same as what we're doing right now, or maybe different than we have right now, or in addition to what we have right now. I think there have been some informal conversations over the past week with a few people. I've heard people having, I'll say, initial impressions, preferences perhaps, of who they think might be the best fit or who they might think might not be the best fit. And so far, I'm not aware of any consensus on, oh, this is the best firm. I have not heard that, but I think if folks are open to this, I'd like to propose that we try and confirm if there is a consensus. If everyone's on the same page, this could be a very short meeting. Are people willing to do a brief poll through the chat function of this to indicate who their favorite contender would be? Do I see anyone who's objecting to that?
Sure, it sounds good. Just remind me the order of them again.
Certainly. Thank you, Michelle. That's excellent. So we had 3 interviews. The first firm that we met with was Mesick, Cohen, Wilson, Baker.
Okay.
The second firm we met with was Lacey, Thaler, Riley, Wilson. And the third firm we met with was John G. Waite Associates. And I recommend we use initials. So MCWB, LTRW, and, oh, I had that actually wrong on mine, JGWA.
Kersten,
Yes, Evelyn.
if we do this in chat, do you want us to give even a very, very, very brief rationale for why?
No, I think this is, we'll call this a straw poll,
Okay.
just to see if we happen to have consensus.
Just want to check. Okay, thank you.
Certainly. So are folks okay with that process?
Sure, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, and does everyone know how to use the chat function?
Where do we find chat?
That's
I don't. Yeah,
Jerry,
I don't know how.
at
Where is
on
it?
my
I don't
page,
even
it shows
see it.
up at the bottom of the page. If you hover your mouse at the bottom of the page, there are some icons. There are 5 icons.
I don't have
in
a
the middle.
mouse.
If you click on that,
My icons are at the top, but I don't see chat up there. Oh, wait, it says more. Hold on a minute. Yeah, I see chat. It's here.
Do you want me to
I have it.
do you want me to try to do a poll with the names so then people could just pick which ones, or is that going to be easier, or it doesn't matter?
you could advise us how much time would that take to do?
I just have to write down who it is again. It'll just take a second.
Okay.
Who was it again?
So the first one would be MCWB for Misik Cohen Wilson Baker. The second would be LTRW for Lacey Thaler Ryler Wilson. And the third one would be JGWA for John G. Waite Associates.
Okay. 1 second.
So do you want the chat to go to everyone or to just you?
I don't know if it is, I mean, I'm not a sophisticated Zoomer.
Well, because it
I didn't
comes,
realize it was a
when it
possibility.
comes up as, it says chat and it says everyone, or it has individual names afterwards.
Oh, see, I've learned something
So-
new. Maybe there's even an option.
That's what mine says. I'm not, this is new to me too, more Kirsten. So
I think Joy
I
proposed.
don't want to sound like I know what I'm doing.
Oh, I'm trying to see if I can get it to work. Hang on 1 sec. It looks like it's gonna take longer than if you guys just put it on chat.
Okay, then I recommend we do it through chat then, and we do it to everyone. I don't think, is everyone comfortable doing it to everyone? Let me ask that.
M?
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Okay,
Are we just doing our like ranked order or
no,
just?
let's just talk about first. And then we'll talk about last. And then we'll get into the details.
We love technology.
So far, I think I see 2 responses.
Well, my response did not go too far. Here we go. Yeah. All right.
One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Okay, has everyone voted? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think everyone has voted. Okay, so I think we can clearly say we do not have consensus about the high pick. And by since I see that everyone is represented as being the high pick, as every firm has been selected, I'm guessing we're not going to have a consensus on the low pick either. But for purposes of a complete list, let's, I should have typed this before. Least favorite option. So now if people could indicate who their least favorite option is.
I can't remember the letters, but
The Misik Cohen Wilson Baker was first, Lacey Thaler
okay,
Riley Wilson
Got it.
was second, and John G. Waite was third.
gotcha.
Hmm.
So interesting. So we really do have some diversity in our choices and our ranking. So it looks like interesting. Shall we start with shall we go around and share what our reservations were first with the various firms that we saw? Strengths, we'll talk about strengths and weaknesses. So let's talk about the weaknesses first and then talk about the strengths. Does that sound okay with folks? So does anyone want to volunteer to speak first on weaknesses they saw in the presentations that we received? Michelle. And we can do this with words, you know, rather than,
Yeah, well, I was hoping so. I didn't feel like typing. I spend most of my day typing stuff. It's hard for me to separate the strengths and the weaknesses because some of them, what's a weakness in one is a strength in another, in my opinion. Obviously, I found in my opinion, fewest weaknesses in MCWB because that was my favorite. I would say they are the priciest of them, so that's definitely a weakness, right? They're expensive. So in my middle one, which is pretty almost sort of tied with the first one, is Lacey, and I think that their weakness is I was a little bit. I felt like their presentation was a little less polished, which is for better or for worse than the first one. They may not. It didn't seem like they had as many bells and whistles to offer. I don't know if that's just because they gave us a scaled down version, which okay, but then it makes me wonder if we're going to end up doing some almost like ad hoc stuff, or if there's more. I don't want to say hidden costs, but things that aren't as upfront, like things that we're going to end up needing or wanting to do that aren't including in this like lowball price. The one that I rated lowest was JGWA, which really, to me, I rate much lower. I got the impression, first of all, they don't have, I forget what the position is called, but they don't have like a librarian they work with, which to me, like they did not have a plan for programming. And that really struck me as wrong. I mean, I felt like some of the most exciting parts of the first two presentations were, having that expertise from a librarian. And I'm like, well, this is one piece of it that those two seem to have covered, and the last one didn't. It didn't really have I felt they were being a little bit cagey because I don't know if it was Evelyn or someone asked, like, do you have someone that you work with? And it was sort of an answer. They don't feel like team players. I got the impression that the gentleman who runs it from the top down. I feel like I just got the impression that it's managed. It's a one-man, there may be other people on the team, but it's that guy that calls all the shots, and he seemed very monopolizing, and I didn't feel like he was someone that was not like an inclusive, I didn't get an inclusive feeling like, oh, we're all in this together, we're gonna work on this together and come to like they had a very specific idea of how this was gonna be, and like they already knew what they were gonna do and were ready to go, which, okay, but this is, we're part of this decision-making process. So that's me.
Thank you. Very interesting observations, and I think very insightful observations. Would anyone like to speak second?
I could try.
Oh, please.
My pick was MCWB, and one of my concerns has always been the chat in the community around the building and the focus of our issues with the building. And as I joined the board and got to know Paul, he emphasized to me how often he's pulled into activity to deal with building issues, and that it concerns him, and that it's like what keeps you up at night, and what keeps him up at night is the inability to anticipate what the building is going to demand of him and our resources, and it's a worry to him. Also, a number of people have always talked about the value of the building and how important it is, and so looking at the engineering assessments of the building and the thoroughness of them, Paul would like a firm that could let us know what's going to happen in the future. And I don't know that that's possible, but I think some people get nearer to it than others. And it seemed to me that the issues of the manner in which they approached the building and the thoroughness, it was just very objective. And I thought they would really do a nice job in giving us the best information that they could. And I was just very impressed with them. And I also felt that their experience with libraries was not insignificant, and that that's the second major concern of what we're about. Certainly the function of what the building is in serving the people, whether we're helping kids acquire skills and information, or just all the things that we do for a broad sector of the community. And I thought that they had a nice appreciation of the balance of those things and the importance of it. So based on the flow of their presentation, and when they presented, they were focusing on what they were presenting. They weren't necessarily focusing on us. I thought it was just the way I'd like to see a contractor work, as in on the issues that are important to us on our behalf. So they just struck me. I know that they're pricey, but in the long run of what we're dealing with, I don't think that price should be as much of a priority as it might be in other circumstances. So I didn't really give a lot of thought to price, other than would we get our money's worth? And I thought that we would. The other two, I think the middle one was not as full in their appreciation of library function, I thought. And for us to come out of this with some unity of the staff support and the importance of knowing that it is a library and that's our primary function, I thought it would be most accomplished there. And then with John Waite's presentation, I had some contact with John, very successful on some building issues, old building issues in downtown when I was a council person. And I found him responsive. He would go to meeting after meeting. He was regular in his appearance. He was active in his monitoring. And I, coming into the process, I thought I might be tipping toward him just from prior experience. And in the end, I thought he was brilliant about potential access to money, and talking about the federal government budget as it's evolving and Tonko, etc. But I also thought that if John were the person, it would be his project. He seemed to speak of the library building with great love, but also ownership. So I think it's not ours to own. We're doing this for the future. So I thought we probably would have a better process with the first one. So that was my pick.
Bob, you are incredibly diplomatic with your words and thoughtful in your words too. So thank you for sharing that. And I apologize. One thing I had meant to mention previously, which I did not, was I think Marie and Paul have both looked at this from a financial standpoint, and I think we're all on the same page.
Paul's saying,
I
wait a
don't
minute.
think my choices are correct on this chat for some reason.
I think
My first choice was Messick, Cohen, Wilson, and Baker. And my least favorite was Jack Waite. So I don't know if that came through right. It doesn't look right on
it looks backwards.
my screen.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that.
But I can explain why.
If you have any thoughts, certainly would want to hear them.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's unusual about this historic structures report is we've asked them to look at the future, which is not always part of a regular historic structures report. So it's an important point going forward as to how these folks handle that question. Now with Messick, Cohen, Wilson, and Baker, I thought was the strongest in this particular area because they have Cohen Associates as their consultant for library design, library programs, what the future might look like. And this is a real question for libraries. The more you read about what the future library is going to look like, the more it looks as if nobody knows very well at this point. But I think Cohen Associates, which is a very respected firm in the field, has certainly mulled this over and is certainly familiar with where libraries are going and what libraries will look like in the future. So I think that's a really valuable part of this study. And I definitely think the Messick Cohen would do the best job here. I felt that Jack Waite, although I know Jack and I think highly of him, actually I know all of these people and I think highly of them, but Jack, though, is primarily a preservationist. I think he's the person to do a standard historic structures report, but not necessarily the person to look to the future.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. That's, I think we're hearing some themes come up perhaps. Would anyone like to go next?
Yeah, I'll go. Yes, I'll go, Jerry. It's interesting because the Messick people, I was not as impressed that I didn't think that they addressed the condition of the building as well as Lacey and Waite. I was very impressed with Jack Waite's assessment of the structure and the outside stone on the building. And I think it's important to look at all of those. And I didn't feel, maybe I missed it, but I didn't feel that Messick, I think to me, it seemed like they sort of were dismissive of that a little bit. And I don't even know if they were planning to do that as part of their report, or if they were going to charge extra to do that. I got the impression it was like, we'll add that on. Maybe I completely missed it. Lacey, I thought did do some of that, addressing some of the needs of the structure, the building needs, repairs, etc. But I think Jack Waite did more and knew it more intimately. I also was very impressed with his ability to fundraise. I understand how important it is to also project what to do for the future. And you're right, he didn't do a very good job on that. But I really liked what he had to say about the building needs, physical needs, building, and fabulous fundraising abilities. And he's done a lot of work with libraries. He's done all the restoration of libraries in New York City, etc. And in his RFP, in his response to the RFP, he did say that figuring out how to turn this into a 21st century library would be part of the structural report. However, he didn't present any of this. So that was where he failed, as far as everybody was concerned. But those are my reasons. So I would go with Waite as my first and Lacey as my second.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts there.
Which is completely different from everybody else.
Well, and so I think that's why we're here, to get together and talk, and we can explore some of these themes here. So we're hearing some themes come up that are consistent, and so I think we can talk about those further as we go. But before we do that, I just want to make sure that Evelyn and Marie have a chance to speak if they choose to speak.
I also wanted to express Brianna's
Please, yes.
opinion. She also felt that MCWB was the best choice.
Did she have any thoughts on supporting or explaining her thoughts?
I'm sure she did. Can I bring those up?
Yeah, of course. On her behalf.
Right. I have it somewhere here. Sorry. It got lost in the in whatever else I was doing. Why don't I go on while I try to find that?
Sure. Or Evelyn, would you like to speak while
Okay.
Maria's looking for this piece of information?
Sure.
Is that okay with you, Marie?
Yes, please
Okay.
rescue me, Evelyn.
Okay. You're not making me feel good about jumping in. I'm going to, of course, not quite follow your first assigned part of the assignment. So I'll go through strengths and weaknesses of each of the three. And I will reiterate that Messick, I'll call it just Messick Cone, is my top choice. But what I'll try to do is go from the others and go through the three pieces, or at least two of the pieces for each of them, and why I think they're weaker and why I think they might be stronger. So we'll start with Waite. Certainly the fact that in their proposal, they only put $2,000 in for a library consultant. And yes, I was the one that asked them who, and they basically said, we'll find a librarian that we've worked with. And I don't think that answers that part of the RFP in any way. Certainly I can read a book, but this is why we're going to someone for some expertise, is someone who has gone through this process and can help us walk through it ourselves. So on that issue, I think we're all reiterating, and reiterating whether people have said that is where they're extremely weak, and that could be very problematic. When it comes to the historic structures report, part, you know, the actual conditions building. Yes, certainly Mr. Waite is very cognizant of what's going on in the building. I will not deny that he has a good feel, shall we say, literally, for what's happening to the marble. The only thing is, in some ways, it is also repetitious of what we receive from Roland, Butler and Mays and other sources, that whether I want to say this as diplomatically as possible, and I know I'm going to stick my foot down my mouth, that maybe not everyone's gotten to go through that whole Butler, Roland, Mays pieces as, you know, with a fine tooth comb, but they've talked about the marble. We've heard about the marble. We know there's problems. We've known there's marbles from, like I said, from a lot of other sources because it was not cleaned properly. We've been hearing that for years. So it doesn't take away from Mr. Waite's concern. It just takes away from the fact that, are we spending money again to get similar responses, to get similar information that we already have? I was less impressed with his methodology for getting some of the information on conditions. You know, the longitudinal piece, I'm trying to remember the words, you know, when you actually take samples from the building. So all in all, well, I see some strengths, I see more weaknesses. When it comes to Lacey Thayer, certainly they were less expensive, but I think they made it clear there'd probably be a lot of add-ons. They certainly talk less about their methodology in doing these structural investigations. They didn't talk about the use of certain technologies unless they were pushed to answer the question about, say, drones or what have you. I don't know if they were considering doing sampling first, but would. But as they went through all these pieces, they kept saying, yes, but we could charge you for that, charge you for that, charge you for that. They also, when we get to that piece on library, you know, the consultantship, I'm not familiar with the Burgers. I know very little about them, and I will not pretend I'm any expert about, have no real expertise in all the people out there. I've been trying to get some information on them, and I have not received any, you know, heard anything yet. But when I looked at the actual proposal and the amount of money and how they were going to spend the money, it was less clear how that would be utilized. I know they're familiar with the building. You know, that's certainly their strength, is that they've been here before. But at the same time, it could also be a weakness because, you know, they already have that mindset. So if we're looking for some fresh opinions, some fresh eyes, it takes us back to Messick Cohen. I thought Messick Cohen, when it came to structural investigations, certainly covered all different ways of how they were going to approach it, you know, the technology they would use, their methodology, you know, how they were going to go about it. I thought they covered that, I thought, really well. And I thought with a great deal of enthusiasm. I was almost very excited about going. And, you know, part of what we're doing is where Roland Butler and Mays didn't cover are two of the, you know, our ornamental walls. And I know Paul has been saying over and over again, he wants to know what's in there. And Roland Butler and Mays said, we can't do it. We've been told it can be done. And listening to what Messick had to say, I was thinking that they might be able to do that. Yes, there might be some extra costs. I'm not pretending I didn't hear him say, well, if we have to do sampling and other things, there might be more. They didn't say absolutely more, but certainly might be more. But I don't think they're going to be unaware of any of the pieces of the building. I mean, they're going to go in and around and through and touch and, you know, the whole 9 yards. They're going to use every single possible sense in trying to get some ideas of the actual condition of the building. And certainly on the library consultant part. Truth in advertising, I have attended an Alex Cohn workshop. I was very lucky to have been admitted to one up in the North Country 2 summers ago. He is certainly one of the most enthusiastic persons I know, and I do know that in library world he is considered, and his firm, his parents are considered some of the best. They have the architecture as well as the library experience. You know, there's a little bit of everything in that family. And certainly I like the way in the proposal, it was clear, it was much more clearly spelled out how that money was going to be utilized. I like the fact that he said they're good ideas and bad ideas. And I think if anyone's going to do that 360, it would be Cohn and Associates. I know he's also familiar with the building because I know he was talking about when he was at Sage, you know, he had some time, not to the point of having done, you know, his own little treatise on it, and I thought he might have even thought there might be something in the family firm on the, you know, our library somewheres in the files. But, so looking at what I consider strengths and weaknesses, I'm certainly going towards Messick. If again, our ultimate goal is give us some ideas of how this works operationally, programmatically. If we're just going to say what's the condition of the building and how the walls, I might go to Lacey, but even then I think I would still head towards Messick because I think they'll do a much more well-rounded conditions report.
Thank you.
I think we need to know it. I really think we need to know about what the problems are, and not just anecdotal pieces, just, you know, actual fact.
I'm sorry, was that Jerry? Or was that Evelyn who just spoke?
I think it was Evelyn.
I just finished that. It should be fact, not anecdotal information.
You mean the report itself?
Right, what they're looking for. You know, we have, like, I kept asking about, we hear cracks are enlarging, are they or are they not? And I think that kind of condition issue is something we need to know. And I think Messick would actually give us that kind of information.
Got it. Thank you, Evelyn. I appreciate it. Thank you for your thoughts on that.
You're welcome.
Marie, are you ready to speak, or would you like me to?
No, I've got what Brianna had said here. Sorry, have so many windows, it takes me a while to find things. She said, I was most impressed with MCWB's proposal and interview. I appreciated their extensive experience and the very specific examples they were able to provide regarding the marrying of a building's history and its modern needs. For example, the Capitol building. I also felt as though the library consultant they teamed with had the most thorough plan regarding how they would go about assessing community needs and integrating the knowledge with the results of the HSR to make further comprehensive recommendations. I felt as though the LTRW team did not have as robust a plan regarding community needs assessment. And while familiarity with the building can be a benefit, in this case, I felt a bit like their recommendations had already been predetermined. I was not impressed with the JGWA team's oversight and minimization of the community needs assessment portion of our RFP, though I did appreciate their close ties to the community.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Marie, and I'm glad that Brianna shared that with you. Are any thoughts you'd like to share at this time, or would you like me to share some thoughts?
I'll go ahead. I'd like to make you bigger here. I also was disappointed with Jack's proposal. Because he has so many strengths, he has so much expertise, that it would have been nice to be able to take advantage of that, but he didn't meet the requirements of the RFP. And even when Evelyn gave him an opportunity to expand more on the library program aspect, he still, did not. He had nothing more to say on that. So it's unfortunate that that's the case. As far as Lacey and Misek, sorry, it's just as much trouble for me to remember the initials as it is to remember the whole name. I felt the same way as Michelle. It was very close. I thought Misek hit kind of all the points that we were asking for in their response. I thought they did a really good job of that. I kind of feel that we don't need all the bells and whistles of their technology that they had indicated. I've worked on grants. You need to, if you have somebody on staff, you need to be able to pay for them. I felt that the library person was more geared toward design. They have an architect in their firm than the other firm, which seemed more fundraising and strategic plan. I know that she was a library director, which is probably one of the strengths. I think I went with Lacey just because I found the interaction with them very comfortable. And that's kind of why, but again, it was very, very much a toss up. And also, if we're getting a similar product at a less expensive price, that's to our advantage. So if all other things were equal, then yes, I think we should consider the cost. I think that's about it.
Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your thoughts. My feeling was that I think we are incredibly lucky in our area that we have so much expertise on historic building assessment and historic building preservation, which I think most other areas of the country, short of New York City or a major metropolis, don't have those resources available to us. The fact that our RFP was two-part, though, that there's a historic building assessment part, and then there's the programming part, the library programming part, I think really is a differentiator for us. And I think several people have commented on John G. Waite's proposal and how they've really did not really address that second part. John G. Waite's resume is incredible on the historic preservation side of things. To be able to assess the conditions, we talk about the marble. I think we've heard that other people have assessed it. There's a problem with the marble. I think John G. Waite certainly would be an expert at advising on how we might be able to address that assessment. So certainly from a technical side, I think John G. Waite's got a lot of skill, but from the library programming side, I thought he was very dismissive. We've got $2,000 here, we'll hire some librarian, doesn't matter who that person is, and they'll tell us what needs to happen. So I was disappointed by the lack of consideration of that need that we have. It was also interesting to note, John G. Waite came in with the largest team of the presentations we saw, but then he introduced 3 or 4 of them and didn't introduce a couple other ones who were there. One person had a chance to speak. One person sat through the entire interview and didn't say a word. So I think someone else mentioned that, it seemed to be that it was the John G. Waite show. And that was my impression as well. And I think we may, and someone else mentioned that, we might get the John G. Waite solution. I think that could be the case if we were to choose to go that way. And I don't feel that I'm not comfortable with that approach. I don't think it's going to be in the library's best interest. So I would not recommend John G. Waite for our project at this time. If we want to preserve a building, a jewel on a stand somewhere that no one's going to ever touch again, I'm sure he would do a great job. But for us as a living, breathing library in a historic building, I don't think that he's the best fit for us. Lacey Thaler, Riley Wilson, and Misa Cohen Wilson Baker. I thought both were very strong and addressed the items that we asked for as part of the RFP. But different sort of approach between the two of them. I think that Lacey Thaler, Riley Wilson, I thought there was good chemistry, good interaction there, but I think it was a little bit more of a more modest proposal. And I think they were clear that there would be some add-ons, and I think that's a good thing to be aware of. But would it be the comprehensive overview that we're looking for? I think they would hit the key points, but I'm not sure if they would be as polished or complete, perhaps, as what we may be looking for. Now, the interesting thing for me is that Misa Cohen Wilson Baker had been partners with John G. Waite Associates 15 years ago. So they certainly have got the similar pedigree. They've got a similar background in terms of the range of work they've worked on. They've got similar technical capabilities. I think I had the impression that they've added to some of their capabilities. They did talk about the LiDAR surveying and the drone survey, and some of these things are, I'll say, new and emerging technologies. We're starting to see it on our side in our practices, and there are some local companies who focus on that to provide that as a service. So it's certainly something we're seeing more of. The fact that Misa Cohen Wilson Baker mentioned it in their proposal, I think that's more as a differentiator to John G. Waite, as opposed to something that is completely unheard of or new. It's not bleeding edge, but it's at the front edge of technology as we move ahead. So I listened with interest when Paul and Evelyn said that they had heard of or heard directly of Cohen Associates as a library consultant. So that I have not heard of any of these firms. So I'm very glad to hear that you have heard of these firms, and that I think I heard that you have had positive impressions of the things you've seen from these firms. Mm-hmm. And for me, I was a little bit on the fence, Lacey Thaler or Misa Cohen Wilson Baker. But now that I've heard Paul and Evelyn's comments, I feel that is probably the best solution for us, or best option for us in terms of gathering services as we move forward. In terms of the finances of this year, we are fortunate to have gotten a grant for the majority of this work. We do have our local share that we need to raise for this as well. We've been fortunate to made some progress with that as well. So I think that all the firms are within our price range. And so my feeling is that Misa Cohen Wilson Baker is going to be the best choice for us. Those are my thoughts.
Kirsten, what about the consultants that Misek and Lacey had? Is there anything that is worthwhile considering there? I noticed one of the, I guess, engineering folks had experience in geothermal. I didn't know whether Misek might have also, I don't really have the expertise to evaluate some of the other things they bring to bear.
Thank you for asking the question. The geothermal may be something that we would want to explore as we move forward. It certainly is technology that is out there, and it's not very common. So it's not like there's a ton of. Not every firm has got that type of experience. For our considerations, one thing I think is extremely important is to look at the experience that the team has working together. When you have a team working on different parts of a project, it's possible that if there's not good communication within that team, that there could be items that are dropped or missed in between. I had the impression that all of these, again, I'm going to remain fairly silent on John G. Waite because the mechanical engineer was the guy who sat there the entire time and didn't say a word. So I don't know really what their collaboration experience has been. I don't know if they've been collaborating for 1 year or if they've been collaborating together for 20 years. But we did hear from Lacey Thaler and from Misa Cohen that they had long-term working relationships with these consultants that they were bringing to the team. So I thought that was an important consideration. And certainly having long-term working relationships, understanding how you communicate with each other is critical to a team like this. So I felt good with both Lacey Thaler and Misa Cohen's consultants in that regard. And regarding the library consultants themselves, again, I think Paul and Evelyn's comments really tipped it for me in terms of which of the library consultants would be a good fit for what we're trying to understand. And Misa Cohen and ACA did talk much more about that process of how they envisioned gathering information from our stakeholder groups. Lacey Thaler, I think, was a little bit briefer. And if I think I heard Lacey Thaler say, "Oh yes, maybe 2 meetings with the library consultant," whereas Misa Cohen Wilson Baker, I think they said 4 or 5. Does anyone else?
No, I think 5. I
Yeah.
can check. If I can find my notes, I would be able to check, but I believe it was 5.
So that was my recollection as well. So certainly, I'm hoping that we're not going to get a pre-packaged, here's the library solution of the 21st century, and this is what you should do, because that's what we tell everybody to do. I think we want to know what is the appropriate, the best solution for Troy and our community, which may be different than what happens in Princeton or New York City.
I think, I got the feeling from Lacey's consultant that she was really talking generally about libraries. Libraries are very different. The urban public library is very different from academic libraries, almost not the same. We don't have the same missions. We don't have the same much of anything. So you can't just say, generally, I have experience with libraries. And that's why I kind of thought that message Cohen was stronger, because I know that Cohen has a lot of experience with public libraries and a lot of experience with urban public libraries. So you bring that to the table. So I think that really makes a difference. And I wanted to say too, in terms of Jack Waite, this historic structures report could uncover some really expensive problems that we may have. And, we may need a second opinion. And I think Jack would be great, to consult, to get another opinion on some of the real basic problems we have. Not to be a pessimist, but, this kind of study can uncover some unpleasant things.
Well, and that's probably that's part of the objective, is to understand what are our challenges, and be able to plan for them, be it good news or bad news. I think we do need to be able to plan for it. So, and I have complete confidence that Jack Waite would give us excellent insights into the library as an object, the building of the library as an object. If he is willing to do that, if we ever have a need for a second opinion on something like that, that would be valuable. May also be expensive to get that advice, but then that's something we can certainly talk about further as we move along.
Yeah, I just say, when I was considering it was a structural report, I thought that it was more, because I hadn't seen the RFP, I thought it was more about the structure and what the needs were, rather than, I think we were looking for both the structural and the adaptive use of the library. And I was putting more emphasis on the structural aspect of it, the aspect of the structure itself, what that needed in order to be preserved. So.
And I think you're right, Jerry, that this isn't a traditional historic structure report in that sense, that we put pretty much equal weight on this.
Maybe that's what Jack was seeing it as a traditional structural report, with the emphasis being on that part rather than on the adaptive use of it. And so he gave that part of it a shorter shrift. And I'm not defending, I'm just saying perhaps this is why it wasn't balanced in that way. He was looking at how to find money to address some of the building issues, etc. So that was what I saw as a strong point.
The one thing I think I inquired a little further on that aspect as part of Jack Waite's presentation. And I am not a financial wizard. I'm not a financial advisor. I defer a lot to others who deal with finances more than I do. However, I did ask, it's very unusual for an architect to be doing fundraising or to be doing pursuing money on the behalf of their clients. I'm not familiar with that at all in my background or in other firms I heard of. But so I did ask a question, I think, during the interview to understand a little bit more about that. Who else was involved besides John G. Waite Associates? And I had the impression that there were also some lawyers and financial advisors involved in that money raising aspect for the firm, the projects he was referring to. Did anyone else hear that, or did
I can speak to that a little. One of the things he was talking about is the historic tax credits, which are much simpler for for-profits because they have taxes.
Ah,
So there are ways that you can, that a nonprofit can benefit from the historic tax credits, but it is of greater complexity, and there are firms, accounting, legal firms that specialize in that. That if we chose to go that way, we could access.
And I'm
So
not-
I
I'm
mean,
not-
all the firms seem to be somewhat now, conscious of sources of support.
Mhm.
But
Paul,
I
were you,
think he would
I'm,
more
did it-
help us, walk us through it and, sort of guide us through that process
you sort of pitching it as a sales.
rather than just say, go and do it,
Yeah. Sorry, Paul, you were saying?
Yeah,
Is
I'm not
intimately-
sure that, that avenue would be available to a tax-supported public library. I think it was used, his example was a nonprofit. And I know that Gloversville talked about doing that, but they were an association library when they talked about doing it, which is a big difference, between that and what essentially we are, which is a municipality.
Well,
So
that's
I
very
really
true. I hadn't thought
doubt
of that
that that
aspect.
would work in our particular case.
Right. That's very true. That's a good point.
So I think that we need to get a sort of a handle on what the issues are, what the potential costs could be, and then we need to then gather some expertise then in terms of how we might do financial fundraising or tax credits or what. And it sounds like there are a whole host of different specialists who may be involved in that, ranging from tax advisors to lawyers to accountants, and sounds like there's a role to play for the architect as well. But I don't know that I would use that as a basis of determination or selection at this time.
Mhm.
we seem to have a preferred firm.
Mhm.
And we've discussed quite a bit, which is helpful, I believe. But do you think that we can make a decision as to what to recommend to the board at this point?
I think so. Bob,
So how do we want to initiate that conversation? Want to do a straw poll again for preferred firm?
I would just make a motion
Okay.
to, am I wrong that everybody except for Jerry and for me prefers MESIC, which is the is a majority?
I think that's correct. Yes.
yes.
Sounds like Jerry
Sounds correct.
maybe you thought about that, realized that the RFP is actually a two-part RFP, so maybe Jerry's opinions changed. I can't speak for.
No, I haven't, it hasn't changed. I'm just saying that she's correct in that more people are for MCWB and just she and I are opposed or have different views. So
Okay.
is that what you're getting at, Marie, that we should go with the majority?
Yes, I mean, because that's what it comes down to. When we have to settle things by a vote. So if
And
everybody feels that they've had the opportunity to discuss this sufficiently, I'm suggesting that we proceed.
And I'll ask one last question, if I may, before we actually make a motion and make a vote. Is there anyone who's here who thinks that we cannot work with MESIC, Cohen, Wilson, Baker? Okay, so that then I would be comfortable with proceeding with if anyone wants to make a motion at this time, shall I make a motion?
Okay,
Okay, I will make a motion that we as a building committee make a recommendation to the board to select Meese, Cohen, Wilson, Baker to be our architect for our historic structures report and facilities assessment as described in the RFP. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Okay. Shall we do a slow roll, a poll?
okay.
Bob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Marie, how do you vote?
Yes,
Michelle, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jerry, how do you vote?
Reluctantly, I vote yes, since that's to be the way it's going to go anyway.
Evelyn, how do you vote?
Yes.
I also vote yes. And Paul, I apologize. I am not, someone can correct me here on the process of board and committee meetings. Who gets to vote?
only the board.
Yeah, I think it's a board
Oh, and
Board.
basically vote.
Just want to make sure. Okay, well, thank you. That I think sounds like we have reached a unanimous decision, and we can go forward with a recommendation at our next meeting. I think our next meeting of the full board is on the 12th, which I think is next Tuesday,
Yes, it's Tuesday.
and we'll come forward with a recommendation to that effect. We've got video of this meeting. Should I do minutes of this meeting, or can we use this meeting here to generate the board agenda item for Tuesday?
Technically, minutes are required.
But technically, all you need to do for the minutes are write down the motion, and it's oh God, what's the word? It's final disposition. You don't have to go through the whole. You could just say discussion of, and motion was approved, or recommendation to go to board. So it can be very brief.
Okay, thank you very much, Evelyn. I appreciate it. I will go back and watch the video this year so I get the wording of the motion, and then I will prepare minutes and send those out. So, and also record who's in the meeting, and we'll get that out. So thank you, everyone, for your help and your participation, your interest, and your contributions to this process. Any final questions before we close?
Yes. So are we having a building committee meetings at the regular time as well?
When is our next building committee? Oh, I guess that's the question. When is our next building committee meeting?
Is it the 22nd? I don't know why I think it's the 22nd. I'm not good with the numbers.
I think I had it down for the 22nd.
That would be our next regularly scheduled building meeting. So that's 2 weeks from today. What do folks think? Should we get together? Should we see if the board supports our recommendation on the 12th, and then decide on next steps at that time? Okay.
I would like to see at some time that we review the other projects and where they stand. The Troy Public Library Foundation has asked for an accounting of how their contributions have been used, and it would be helpful to have that. So we have some other business as well.
Fair enough. So then let's schedule getting together on the 22nd at 4 o'clock to go over our regular business and any next steps that come forward from the board meeting.
So I have another question. Are we going to discuss any changes from what's proposed by MESIC with them?
Are you thinking in terms of fee, or are you thinking in terms of, I'm not sure what you're thinking of.
Either, just are we just accepting their proposal as it stands, or are there things we'd like to see that are different from what they've proposed? Oh,
In terms of fee, John G. Waite's fee and MESIC Cohen Wilson Baker's fee was
$2,000, about
$2,100 difference between them. Does anyone feel there's a benefit or desire to try to does anyone see any does anyone see the benefit or desire to try and reduce that fee?
I was wondering whether they were aware of the Alwyn Bush's virtual tour of the library when they were talking about what was needed in terms of their laser stuff and what they would be producing. And
they may have been showing Owen Bush's things when they had that in their presentation.
Pardon?
They may have had that.
They did, didn't they? I thought they showed it to us too and said, here, and here's your panorama, and they flipped it around, which was, I thought very impressive that they had actually looked at it and thought about it and used it.
I thought it was Lacey that referenced it, but
I think it was, to be honest, I think it was Messick.
I thought it was Lacey too.
I one thing that was in Lacey's that I didn't see in MESIC was the what's it called? The historic significance report.
They talked about that. MESIC talked about that. They talked about, if I remember correctly, they talked when they were talking about some of the things that they've worked on. They talked about incorporating, doing the looking into the history of the building and incorporating that into the report.
And that's a required portion of the RFP.
Okay.
Item C1A, history of the Hart Memorial Library building, summarizing pertinent dates, events, and persons relevant to the Hart Memorial Library. So that's a required part of the so I don't think any change, unless you're looking for more information. I think we've got the National Historic Register nomination paperwork, and I think there's a lot of information.
Isn't that primarily exterior? I was thinking more of the interior. Somebody spent a fair amount of time on that to identify the level of significance as to, so what's important to maintain, and what perhaps isn't, so that you can work within that. So I don't, maybe Kirsten, if you can take a look and just see whether you feel it's complete as it is, and I would feel better. Also, they're about 10,000 over our proposed project cost. It's so just so people are aware of that.
And the others were, Jack Waite was 8,000 over our
Right.
anticipated project cost.
But I'm just saying what we, what it was allocated for it, what was approved by
would
the
you like to
grantors.
see a negotiation to have them reduce their fee?
I don't know. I have no problem with it if it is related to the value that they'll be providing. So, but I just don't know whether that's the case.
I think that from my perspective, the Jack Waite and Misa Cohen proposals in terms of dollars are almost identical.
Yes, I agree.
But I think that the scope of services that is being proposed by Misa Cohen's proposal is more extensive than Jack Waite's proposal, and I think it meets the requirements that were spelled out as part of our RFP. I did not see anything in there that was missing, that was deficient from what we were asked for in our RFP.
So it does cover longitudinal studies, as Evelyn called them. So we don't anticipate any additional costs for those.
It was interesting that Lacey Thaler broke those costs out. I do not anticipate any additional costs for those longitudinal studies from these other consultants, but I certainly can have an explicit conversation with them to confirm that.
Okay, because it can go. I just worry that it'll cost even more. So okay.
I'm sorry, I'm not able to answer the question at this time.
I thought Nessick had a few places where they said we could add those on for extra cost or something like that. That's why they wasn't going with Nessick, but I thought that was more about the structural problems with the building that they weren't going to address. So I don't know what I miss things.
I think that Bob had to sign off, so I think that was a good buy from Bob. So,
Kirsten, to answer that thought, I think that they were talking about actually having to do some physical sampling, some more invasive. I don't want to say put their fist into the walls and pull something out. That's rather a graphic way of putting it, but I think that's where they thought maybe there might be some additional costs if they actually have to do something like that, where they're actually pulling things out of the wall to test it. But I think it was a might not, we will charge you. It was a we might, not a we are.
And I do want to make it clear, this is a historic structures report. This is not a set of design documents that identify all the solutions to any concerns that are found. This is a report that's meant to assess the building and to come up with areas of concern that will require further investigation in order to prepare construction documents. So at the end of the day, we're not going, this report will identify issues that may need to be addressed. And as we say, yes, let's address this issue and that issue, additional investigations will be required at that time to finalize all the detailing of the solutions to address those concerns. So I think in response to Evelyn's observation and Marie's question, that if we say, hey, we want to know more about this specific piece right here, you say there's a problem. Well, what's the solution? If we're looking for more information on a solution, I would anticipate there would be additional costs. In terms of assessing whether there's a concern, any investigations for that, I would believe, were included as part of this proposal. So certainly I can have a conversation with Mrs. Cohen to understand if our understanding is correct.
Yeah, I guess I got the impression that it could cost us more money, a lot more money, just to have them investigate other aspects of the building's needs. So that's one of the reasons they weren't for me. But, I mean, why are we still discussing it? Because we've already made our decision on who it's going to be.
Well, because yes, we've chosen the firm, but is there any negotiation that we have to do around their proposal, or do we accept it as is? I don't know that we've said that the two are the same, but if Kersten is comfortable, I have no problem with proceeding with what he suggested.
I am comfortable with the proposal as it currently stands. I would not anticipate that they will have done all the investigations necessary to complete a set of design documents to address the conditions found, but that they have included investigations and testing required to assess the areas of concern.
Thank you. I just don't know. So.
I think it's a very specific question, and I think it's worth understanding better. So if it's okay with Paul, I would reach out to Mr. Wilson and ask him that question. Is that okay with you?
Oh, yeah.
Marie, is that okay with you?
Oh, yes, much better you than I.
Okay, so I will have a conversation.
Wouldn't it be Messick? You would be talking to Messick, not Wilson, right? Wasn't Messick the head? Did we speak with Messick? Wasn't Messick the person that was on? Or
I think Messick is retired.
Oh, okay. So
I think it was Wilson who actually did this.
Wilson? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if it's okay with everybody, I'll make that inquiry. I will do that Monday morning, and I will let everyone know when I hear back from them. Is that okay?
Oh, that's great, because that's before the board meeting.
I think we certainly want to have an answer to that before the board meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your time. I really appreciate it. It's an exciting process, and I appreciate everyone's candor to share your thoughts about these different firms, and listening to each other, and I thank you very much for this process. So thank you, everybody. I hope you have a very nice weekend. Be well, and see you on Tuesday at the latest.
Thanks.
Okay.
No.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.